In this video, we discuss some of the biggest financial roadblocks that may very well keep you from retiring. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
For many of you, this will be a good news, bad news video. It's good news because the stuff that we're going to talk about is correctable if you just know that it exists. The bad news is that if you don't take a course correction, many of you may find yourself in a position where you can't actually retire, at least not retire well. First, I need to acknowledge the road ahead may be a little scary for some people. For example, 23% of all retirees retire in poverty. The chances are good that this is not you because that group tends not to watch videos like this. Health deteriorates rapidly in late-stage retirement, and so at that point, there's no way to undo a bad financial decision. Again, if you're watching a video like this, your intent is to avoid something like that, of course. And finally, most videos don't give you a way to understand where you sit in the retirement arena. They give you rules, the 4% rule, the 1/20th of your assets spending rule, the 50-50 debt versus equity investment rule. You get the point. This video will help you understand whether you're on your way to success or not, and help outline some of the big risk areas that you might not have thought of. Because avoiding risk is 2/3 of the battle. Success comes from making the right moves, small moves, again and again. Failure comes from making one or two catastrophic moves that you can't undo. Stick around to the end because I'm going to give you the one golden rule above all else that you need to follow to be successful in retirement. All right, let's go. Let's get the easy one out of the way first. Going into retirement with a heavy debt burden. Debt has two components, a psychological component and a practical one. Psychologically, if you go into retirement with a big amount of debt, a large amount of debt, even if it's something like a 3% mortgage, it tends to make retiring a lot harder. Why? Because you know that that debt is going to be there for 10, 15, 20 years or more. Then there's the practical component. The very nature of income and expenses is that as you approach the end of every month, you have very little left over. Why? Because as people continue on in their lives, they upgrade their lives. And by the way, this is normal despite some of the rhetoric around this. For example, first you have roommates, then you have your own apartment, then you buy your own place. While some of these upgrades aren't entirely necessary, many of them are pragmatically necessary. Upgrading from the bus to a car, for example, is a practical upgrade, unless of course you're buying a Bentley or a Porsche. The point is, over any given month, you're going to have obligations that need to be paid, and if you sat side by side with someone who had those same obligations, but without debt, they would be better off, probably even far better off financially than you. So if you're looking at your future and you don't know whether you can afford to retire or not, try looking at that same future, but with no debt. Take the debt payment out. If it looks better, then work to pay down your debt pronto. The next is, what if you have nothing saved? And by the way, the question always comes up, so I'll answer it right away. What if I have nothing saved, but I have a pension? Well, that's different. You have your pension that pays for a period of time, maybe even for the rest of your life, that is the substitute for having a healthy 401k or IRA. So when I say nothing saved, I mean truly nothing saved, not even a pension. According to the Survey of Consumer Finance, it's the Federal Reserve data that comes out every 3 years, 52% of people between 65 and 69 have less than $10,000 saved. And it gets worse from there the older the representative data group. This means that that group under review is living on Social Security alone, for the most part. Now, I'm not saying you can't live on Social Security alone. In fact, I have a whole video on that. But you do need to get creative if this is the route that you need to take. And there are two big costs in retirement that you need to manage. One is housing, the other is healthcare. When it comes to housing, there are a lot of ways to manage this down. One is if you own a home or own a multi-bedroom unit, you can rent one of the bedrooms out. If you don't own a home or a unit, you can be one of the people that rents one of those bedrooms out. And if you and a partner want to find out how to save money, you can rent an apartment together if neither one of you owns a home. There are a lot of ways to get creative in this area, by the way. One commenter said that he sold his home and he upgraded his son's basement to a full apartment, and he's going to live there until his time comes. When that does happen, his son will have an apartment attached or included in the home, which will increase the value of the home, so everybody wins. He gets to be closer to his family, and his son gets an upgraded house that will eventually have a value far greater than it does today. The next point that suggests you're not ready to retire is if the thought of not working depresses you. Some people love their work. Now you're saying, Jeff, what are you talking about? I do not like what I do. Well, some people do. This depends on what you do, of course, because sometimes work is its own reward. The work is interesting, or it makes a difference, or it gives the worker significance. None of that, by the way, is about the money. If this is you, even if you can retire early, you may not wish to. A few examples that come to mind. The first is healthcare, where your work changes people's lives for the better. Or perhaps you're in education and you're shaping the future of our country. Or perhaps you're in research and doing work that will shape the future of our country in a different way. The bottom line is that if you love what you do, there may not be a real reason to get out early. Another roadblock may be if you're paying for another household in addition to your own. In fact, this one comes up a lot. You have the means to support yourself and your spouse, if there are two of you, but you also have to pay for another household. You have obligations to fund another household. This happens with children from time to time, failure to launch syndrome. They have the ability to figure it out, but with mom and or dad helping, why would they? Or they can't take care of themselves due to circumstances that are not changeable. A disability comes to mind when we're talking about this category. Another example is a parent that didn't plan well when they were working, and now they've reached the point where they have no money. Or they had a bad investment and lost all of their money, or maybe even a scam, or something as horrible as elder abuse. Elder abuse is when a child can work, but refuses to do so and instead manipulates their parents for money. The last one is usually laden with guilt-producing language like, you did this to me, it's not my fault, or something other. But no, in many cases, maybe even most cases, it's just a smokescreen. Because frankly, it's easier to run a con than drive an Uber. You get the point. If it's truly a scenario where someone can't work, one of the ways to deal with this is to let them use part of the house. The basement, for example, like we talked about earlier, or maybe the area above the garage if it's finished and heated. They have enough distance where they feel somewhat independent and you are not supporting two households. Also, in many cases, Social Security can help. This is either done through a dependent benefit program on the back of your primary Social Security, or through supplemental security income, and that's a needs-based program. Finally, there's Social Security disability insurance. This is one that actually requires the recipient to have worked and earned enough credits to qualify for Social Security. I'll put a link to all of the relevant Social Security pages in the description below so that you can get a better idea of which one might be right for someone that you care about. The next roadblock might be that you have major financial obligations in the future that just haven't materialized yet. For example, if you're going through a divorce, or you're about ready to lose a lawsuit, or someone that you are financially supporting has a deteriorating medical condition that can get really expensive very, very quickly. While each of these situations is completely different from the other, it makes sense for you to talk to an expert to see what your options are, either to protect your assets or to manage through the problem. And finally, the last point, and it's one that's irrefutable. If you spend more than you bring home, you won't be able to retire. And unfortunately, many people have done this their entire adult lives. As I mentioned earlier, 52% of people between age 65 and 69 have less than $10,000 to their name. There are many reasons for this, of course, but one of them is that they spent more, or they spent the exact same amount as they had coming in for their entire adult life. The problem, of course, is that this only gets worse when you retire because your income doesn't tend to go up, it tends to go down when you step into retirement. But the good news is that for most people, it's relatively easy to correct with a simple budget and a little self-control. Of course, the faster you get it under control, the better it is for you, because when you get to the point where you're spending less than you're bringing home, you can take the excess and put it into a retirement investment vehicle of some sort. Gang, I will be going on vacation. My next video will be out on January 7th. In the meantime, let me extend my warmest wishes to you over the holidays and be one of the first to wish you a happy new year. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.